You talked about some of the steps you took already, but I want to get into like maybe another business example, some of the success stories you've seen. How did some of these entrepreneurs that they listened to what you were saying, they started to grasp it, but then they had to start taking the action in order to take a business that was going possibly to go bankrupt to going into seven figures? Talk us through how that like coming of age story worked for this
Sure.
process.
Sure. I'll use that one as an example. I could use several examples, but for her specifically, the big challenge was onboarding clinicians. So she runs a mental health facility. So every business, I think, has a similar struggle that she has, where they have two infrastructures to build. One is client facing, and one is more of the internal. So, but those two journeys of hiring and onboarding internal staff while also attracting new clients into the business, they're very similar funnels and similar models, but I don't think most people treat it that way. And she wasn't treating it that way. So what we set up was for her internal operations. You could call it under HR, you call it whatever it is, but the internal staff, she needed to have a staff in place to help with fulfillment. So all of her clinicians. So we built out an onboarding structure. So how could we automate and delegate, like getting ads placed by a virtual assistant team and fielding the responses with a templated approach, putting those applicants for the clinician position through some sort of ringer, and that way by the time the people that were actually qualified were able to show up on her calendar, and then she would do some sort of evaluation with those individuals. So we had this streamlined process of attracting clinicians into her practice. And then we took it a step further, because then once she hired the people, it's how do we get them onboarded and trained to be able to do the job as effectively as possible in the least amount of time. Her former process was 90 days. That's way too long to get someone trained to be able to do the job. And what she was finding is she was paying them for the 90 days, but they weren't doing any work. It was just like training and nesting period. She was hemorrhaging money paying these people to not actually produce results. So we cut that out. So we went through and we looked at what is the actual onboarding and nesting period. We knocked it down to 3 days. So we went from 90 days to 3. Okay. And how we did that was we took what's the meat of those 90 days, and we put it into videos. So we put them in a learning platform software. So they went through that platform software within that initial period of time. So the videos ended up being, let's call them 2 hours or whatever. They had 3 days to go through 2 hours of content. And then on the third day is when it's like, cool, we're going to start having you shadow and start doing work. And then on that same day, by the end of the day of shadowing, that's when they do their first actual clinician meeting. So what we took 90 days, we brought it down to 3. So the clinician was actually adding value to the business within that 72-hour mark, and
Mm.
getting paid during the same amount she was paying them, but they're generating results for the business. So they're not just like eating up capital. So that was just the model of the internal operational side. Then we take it similar model for the lead gen. So how do we have same thing? We want to create applications constantly for good quality clinicians. We want to have applicants for patients that need
Mm.
mental health. So we put in a lead gen model, prospecting for these individuals. So we went to different social media groups, LinkedIn and Facebook groups, and had our virtual assistant team go in there and organically have conversations inside those groups, commenting, liking, dropping into their inbox, having conversations with them, seeing if they're a qualified candidate. And if they are, adding them to a spreadsheet, and then sending a Calendly link to hop on a call for an introductory call with someone on our team to see if they're a qualified candidate. So this whole infrastructure is happening without her, for low wage, because we're using Calendly, which is a technology software for like $10 a month. And she's
Hmm.
using a virtual assistant team. Now we do have a virtual assistant service that she's using. So she's having this falls under that under $25 an hour work of people prospecting and organizing the list and qualifying prospects to get on our calendar, sending them the link. So now there's clients, prospects showing up, and a funnel of lead gen happening. So now there's this ongoing lead gen happening with social media. Then we put in some Facebook ads. We updated our website for a lead capture. So that way people could go to the website and put a lead capture on the site for a value add, which is enter your email here. Well, what it used to be was like, do you need mental health, help? not many people are going to raise their hand and say, I need that. Now it's like, enter your email address for the 10 keys on how to work through your mental health. So we created a value add sequence to capture their email. And then we have a drip campaign, put it in her CRM. She didn't even know how to spell CRM. She didn't even have a CRM, right? So then we helped her create a CRM, a client, resource management software tool. Now there's marketing and going on behind the scenes. So she's talking to people, even though she's not talking to them. There's videos of her, even though she's not there. It's so she's still influencing them, getting these prospects integrated into her business. So this lead gen pipeline, and then after a sales call, if they're qualified, then there's a sales process, and we put them through a sales process, which is getting them integrated into the culture, getting their schedule, getting their payment structure, all the documentation. So by the time they get to a clinician, the process is streamlined. So those same two processes that I just listed off, I know I'm going through this quick because we have an operator to owner course. We spend 12 weeks on this stuff. So it's hard to kind of like break it down to the simplest form. I'm trying to do my best here, but we build out those two infrastructures, those two funnels, those two processes with the system, process, policy, technology, put that in place for the two verticals, which is internal and client facing. And I'll tell you right now, now it's like this machine. So now she has
Yeah.
graduated problems. So now the
Yeah.
problems are, I have too many leads. What do I do? How do we, I got to find more qualified clinicians. How can we streamline that a little bit? And like, these are different problems. The problems don't go away. They're still there. It's just different. And the problem that once was, I'm doing everything, I have no time. The problem is not, it's still the same. It's not like she's just like, oh my God, it's like, I have a lot, I'm spending a lot of time. She's spending time differently.
hmm
She's still a busy, overwhelmed entrepreneur, but it's a busy, overwhelmed entrepreneur with actually like a machine that's producing revenue.
Yeah.
And it's a different set of problems. That's where it becomes fun. It becomes a game. And we want to graduate. It's just like we're playing a video game. There's different levels. You don't want to stay at level one all the time. And level one as a business owner is a solopreneur doing everything. That's level one. And you're just like check to check and exchanging the time for money. When you get to like where she's at, she's not arrived. She's still figuring stuff out. But it's like when you're at that level in your business, maybe that's level 4 or level 5, it's it's just a different focus. The focus isn't like, shoot, how are we going to get leads today? It's how could we go from where we are to the next level, to going from a $1 million operation to 1.5 to 2 million. How do we increase our profits? And it becomes different. So again, that's a very long example for one example, but I tried to pick one that was hopefully pertinent to a lot of different industries and trying to be as broad as possible with that explanation.
Oh, completely. And you touched on client facing side. I think a lot of people think of like leverage and automation systems on the back end, on that back end, like, oh yeah, we can get a lot of that stuff figured out. But you talked about creating the machine for actual, I have problems with leads. Like I'd like to get more leads in my business, and getting that solved without you just running around town, creating more sales, creating more meetings for your own calendar. Right.
Oh yeah.
I,
To that point, Kyle, sorry to interrupt. We
yeah,
just have a really great example. So using that strategy, that same like our engagement strategy, we'll call it, using social media, finding the prospect, having our virtual assistant team court them and have the conversations with them, and then they'll populate a spreadsheet. Typically, if you did 100 cold messages, Kyle, someone's listening to the show, you think about it, you send 100 cold messages, what would be the response rate to 100 cold messages on average?
yeah. Like I'm thinking you're getting less than 5.
It might be 5%, maybe 5% response rate. The only reason it's top of mind, because I'm coming from a client call. We just tested this, the last month was a 36% response rate. So 36%. So we sent out, it was like 270 some messages, and they got 87 leads. So whatever 87 was, 87 divided by 36%, that was how many messages were sent. So using the strategy, 37 response, they got 87 new leads, all said yes, like to
Mm,
whatever that initial response was. So the lead gen machine is real, right? And it depends on the industry, it depends on what the ask is, it depends on whatnot. But having that machine that's working for them, and then having taken those leads, what do you do with those leads? Get them on a calendar. How do we get them on a calendar? And then it's like, what's the sales process there before it even gets gets to the owner? We have individuals in the capital investing space, a couple front row dads specifically, but one front row dad, he created this whole funnel where he's finding these mobile home parks, people who have mobile home parks. His VA is prospecting, finding leads of mobile home park owners, messaging them, getting them on a calendar, and then having a conversation with them. And then he's having this whole other process of finding capital investors, people that have money that want to put to work, prospecting them, getting them on a calendar. So he has a conversation with the mobile home park owner, and then has a conversation with the capital investor. 90 days, zero to nothing, 90 days, he landed his first mobile home park deal using someone else's money. And he said, that already paid for the next 10 years of using the virtual assistant services on my first deal. So now the next 10 years are paid for. So everything else is profit, because it's just building the machine of prospecting and lead gen and capital. Like, it's just thinking differently. And
Yes.
these epiphanies come from working on the business. Not, you
Yes.
can't really have these epiphanies while you're working in it, sending those messages, or, doing the actual clicking the buttons.